Well, we're coming into the final segment of our programme today, and that is, of course, Live on Live. Now, in the wake of the UK decision to leave the European Union and Donald Trump's victory in the United States presidential polls last year, the elections in the Netherlands are being keenly watched to gauge the strength of far-right and populist polls ahead of other votes in Europe later this year. Now, amid such a fragmented political landscape in Holland and the possibility of the next government being made up of a 4 or 5 party coalition, a lot of Dutch people may well vote strategically. Now, today I'm joined in the studio by Famke Krumbmüller, who's an independent political analyst and co-founder of OpenCitiz business intelligence group. Famke, thank you very much for coming back on the programme.
It's a pleasure.
Now, let's have a look here. Prime Minister Mark Rutte and his Liberal VVD are in the lead in the latest polls and potentially poised for a meagre win with a predicted between 24 and 28 seats in the 150-seat parliament. However, Rutte is fighting off a stiff challenge from the Freedom Party anti-Islam populist rival Geert Wilders, who could claim only a little behind him between 20 and 24. Now, let's have a look at Wilders himself. And we're looking globally today about the rise in populism. He's come out with a one-page manifesto. I think the kind of rule of thumb now is keep it simple, don't get too complicated, don't go too much into the detail. Now, he's pledged to close borders to Muslim immigrants, to shut mosques and to ban sales of the Quran. And he's basically revealed no details of how he will put these plans into action. But mainstream parties in the Netherlands have refused to form any coalition with Wilders. But with such a large potential slice of the seats in Parliament, will this not only serve to increase the Freedom Party's support base as an outsider against the Liberal establishment?
I mean, I would even argue that that's probably what he's hoping for. I don't think he actually wants to lead the next government. He knows he's not going to. So I guess that's consistent. But yes, it depends what the next government will do, definitely. It will probably be a relatively centrist, broad consensus-based government, given that you need at least 4 or 5 parties to form a majority. And so depending on how they tackle these really important issues such as security, immigration, integration, these things that Wilders keeps on banging about, that really depends on how then the next elections will go and how Wilders' electorate feels that they have been heard or not.
Now, just a quick thing about Dutch politics, to kind of give us a recap. There's a lot of parties out there. There's a lot of small parties. In opposition, is there anybody, can you give us a snapshot of the other parties that could potentially get into bed with Wilders on the opposition side and the smaller party side?
Yeah, so overall, just to sum up, there are 28 parties running in this election, and between 12 to 14 are expected to get into government. This is because the Netherlands has one of the most representative parliamentary systems in the world, actually. That means there is no parliamentary threshold. You don't need at least 5% like in other countries in order to get into the parliament. And that means you have a lot of tiny parties with 1 or 2 seats that make it into the 150-seat parliament. And so whoever gets the mandate to form the next coalition, if they stick to their promise as they have made it at this stage to not work together with Wilders' party, they will have to cooperate with at least 4 other parties, 3 or 4 other parties, so 4 to 5 total, in order to actually have a majority.
And let's also have a look at, there's another kind of rising star, one can say, a guy called Jesse Klaver, who's he's young, he's dynamic, he's the left-wing leader, and he heads GroenLinks. Now, his party has been doing very well in these polls. Now, he's only 30 years of age, so, I mean, is this a kind of a liberal backlash against the young conservatives or the young anti-migrant people who are kind of also serving as the power behind Wilders' rise within the polls? He could be getting within 16 to 18 seats here. But he could also then be the kingmaker. Is that a distinct possibility?
Yes, that's definitely right. It's a very interesting phenomenon. I'd like to compare it probably to what's happening in France with Macron.
En marche, but Dutch style.
Right. To a certain extent, it represents a new, obviously he's representing an established party in the Netherlands, but still it kind of represents an anti-elite, everything that we've had for the past few years or decades, but without the anti-immigrant and anti-everything attitude that a lot of the populist parties have, and it seems to be relatively popular as well in the Netherlands.
So he's liberal anti-establishment, basically. Is that what one could say as a kind of a tag?
Yes, to a certain extent. I mean, maybe anti-establishment is relatively extreme.
Seeing that he's a centrist left.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is he hasn't been in government over the past years, and so he's an outsider from the electorate's point of view.
Now, we have to mention the elephant in the room here, and that, of course, is the diplomatic row with Turkey since the weekend, which Turkey has suspended all ties with the Netherlands, and this has in some way eclipsed these polls. But Rutte's actions at the weekend, barring those Turkish ministers from speaking at a pro-Erdogan rally in Rotterdam, seem to have boosted his image at the end of this campaign, ahead of tomorrow's vote. But let's have a look at the Turkish diaspora in the Netherlands. I mean, be they second generation or otherwise, who do they usually support in Dutch politics?
I mean, I guess amongst 28 parties, it's really difficult
to say.
They've got a big
choice. There's a big choice.
I can tell you who they won't support.
And that would be the Freedom Party, I take it, yes. But there's no traditional kind of pro-migration, like very liberal party that they would actually kind of rally behind, per se? They're still, I'm sure, there's still a block that has to be, to be reckoned with for potential votes when on the campaign trail.
Definitely. I mean, the entire immigrant population in the Netherlands is obviously... I think the Turkish only make up 2% maybe of the electorate, but in general, it is obviously part of the population that needs to be taken into account. There are a few parties that are more traditionally liberal on that front. I guess D66 is part of that. They're relatively big pro-European.
Who we had on the programme actually earlier today,
right.
Yes, D66.
Exactly. GroenLinks will also be much more open to that. And, and they say it, immigration is okay. What is important is integration within the Netherlands.
Now, let's have a look at kind of the broader subject here about the rise of populism in Europe, but also around the world, from the Philippines to the United States. And Nigel Farage, former UKIP leader, who was once considered a footnote in politics, but then found himself right inside the inner circle of Donald Trump last November when Trump won and was being bandied around as Mr. Brexit on the hustings and out doing great PR work for Trump himself. Now, he himself said that this is a movement, this is a revolt that's rising throughout Europe, including in nations such as France and Germany. Is populism and anti-immigration and anti-establishment conservatism the new cool in 2017? What do you think?
I mean, we're definitely talking about it a lot, especially post-Trump and post-Brexit. But what's important in the upcoming elections, and I think that's the crucial difference, is that it doesn't look like any of these populists can come to power in any of these countries. So in the Netherlands, Wilders is most likely going to be excluded from government. In France, Marine Le Pen is not expected to win the second round, even though obviously it's already significant that she will make it to the second round. And in Germany, the far right has actually been losing support more recently. So, and they're nowhere close from getting to power in these states.
But there's still a message that the people such as Farage, Marine Le Pen here in France and other European populists want. They paint Europe as a mosaic of states instead of a commonwealth of shared currency and open borders. And they want Europe to look more like it did 60 years ago. One could even go as far as, say, 70 years ago, despite the fact that the European experiment itself, and what has brought us here today, was designed to prevent European nations from engaging in an endless, centuries-old cycle of wars. Now, why is that message not getting across from Brussels, and why do you believe that there is a collective amnesia? Is it that because the generations who remember the Second World War are just dying out?
I mean, I definitely think that that's one of the elements. And the populist response is just often very easy. As you've said yourself, Wilders presented a 1 A4 page of his program. They tend to not elaborate on how they actually want to implement all their proposals, and tend to bring easy solutions to problems that are indeed happening and are indeed very difficult to find solutions to. But often the populist solutions just seem to be extremely easy. It's like leaving the euro and everything will be better.
Well, that's very much. I mean, we can look into to the Commission President, EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. There on the 1st of March, he presented options for reforming the bloc and to shore up unity and popular support after Brexit. And I mean, he was, laying out 5 points on white paper, and it's all very much about, growth of jobs, and we'll get rid of roaming charges, and we'll generate 500 billion euro of additional growth in Europe. But no different to Hillary Clinton's failed campaign in 2016, the proven facts just still don't stick in the mind of people. Now, do you believe that the EU needs a public relations overhaul before it actually can implement reforms?
I mean, I forgot the numbers, but they published the huge amount that they plan to spend on communications, actually.
Oh, what they have actually?
Yes.
They've said mea culpa. We need to.
Yes. So they're definitely aware of that. And I think another important element, and this has been happening across all member states of the EU, is that national politicians tend to take the credit if something works well and put it on the EU if something doesn't work well.
Famous Brussels bashing.
Scapegoat,
that's
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So their communications is definitely contributing to this type of anti-EU populism that they're now facing in their own countries.
Well, it reminds me of a satirical piece, a headline that was evoking a campaign in 1979 between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. It was from the Onion magazine. And the campaign for Jimmy Carter was like, let's talk better mileage, where the campaign for Ronald Reagan was just, let's nuke the bastards. Right. So it was just one just struck when the other was speaking sense. So, I mean, that's pretty much what we're getting into now. But a quick thing about the European Union. Let's look at what's happening also in Eastern Europe. It's very much on the rise again, especially with the immigration crisis. Now, we're running out of time, but briefly, do you think that Eastern European countries are wary of the centralised EU bloc because of their past under communism and their loss of sovereignty under communism?
I think it's almost contradictory to a certain extent, because in the first place, they did join the EU because they were hoping to get support, let's say, in their development because of their past. And now at the same time, they're unwilling or reluctant, to say the least, to go along with the core European states at the time.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that's all we have time for here today. Famke Krumbmüller, independent political analyst and co-founder of OpenCitiz Business Intelligence Group. It's great to have you back on the programme.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have for Paris Live PM here this Tuesday, but we'll be back at the same time here tomorrow on Radio France International. Have a good day. Bye-bye.